few years ago, my brother and I were on a long road trip, heading home after visiting family. It was past midnight, and we were driving through a deserted stretch of highway in Tennessee. No streetlights, no houses, just miles of empty road cutting through the woods. We had been on the road for hours and were running low on gas. The next station wasn't far, maybe 5 miles ahead, so we figured we'd be fine. That's when we saw him. A man standing near the edge of the road, thumb out, waving. He looked normal, mid-40s, scruffy but not dirty, wearing a jacket and jeans, the kind of guy you'd expect to see on a long-haul drive. My brother slowed down. "Dude," I muttered, "I don't know." But before I could finish, he had already rolled down the window. The guy leaned in slightly. "Hey man, sorry to bother you. My car broke down a few miles back. Just need a ride to the gas station. It's right up the road." His voice was calm, almost too friendly. I hesitated. It was late. This stretch of highway was completely deserted, but 5 miles? That wasn't far. My brother gave me a look, and before I could protest, he unlocked the door. The guy slid into the back seat. Red flag number 1. The second the door shut, he let out a long exhale, like he had been holding his breath. "Man, I really appreciate this," he said, leaning forward slightly between our seats. We nodded, my brother keeping his eyes on the road. For the first few minutes, everything seemed fine. The guy made small talk, asked where we were headed. But then, red flag number 2. "You guys carrying any cash on you?" My brother tensed up. "Why?" The guy leaned back. "Oh, no reason. Just wondering." The hair on my arms stood up. Another minute passed. Then, red flag number 3. "Actually," the guy muttered, voice lower now. "Pull over." My brother and I exchanged a glance. "Gas station's not far," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The guy sighed, and then, slowly, he pulled something from his jacket pocket. A small knife, old and worn, but sharp enough to be a problem. I said, he muttered again, "Pull over." We didn't argue. My brother eased the car to the side of the road. My heart was slamming in my chest. The guy smirked like this was all routine. "Look, I don't want any trouble. Just give me your wallets and I'll be on my way." Neither of us hesitated. We pulled out the little cash we had, shoved it toward him. He snatched it up, then nodded toward the locks. "Now let me out." My brother unlocked the doors, and just like that, the guy slipped out into the night. He didn't run, didn't even look back, just walked back toward the woods like this was completely normal. We waited until he was completely out of sight before we peeled out of there. When we got to the gas station, we told the clerk what happened. He just sighed and shook his head. "Yeah," he muttered. "You're lucky. Some of them don't just want cash." That part stuck with me, because I knew he was right. This happened about 10 years ago when I was driving cross-country for work. It was late, around 1 a.m., and I was in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in rural Texas. No streetlights, no buildings, just an endless stretch of empty road. That's when I saw a figure up ahead, a man, standing on the side of the road, thumb out. I usually don't pick up hitchhikers, but the guy looked clean-cut, mid-30s, dressed in a button-up and jeans. Something about him seemed off, though. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't even looking at the road, just staring off into the fields, completely still. I slowed down just a little as I passed, just enough to get a better look. Then he turned his head, fast, like he knew I was looking at him. And then, as if recognizing me, he grinned and waved. I sped past him and kept driving. Probably just some weird drifter, right? About 30 minutes later, I pulled into a small gas station to grab a coffee. As I stepped inside, I froze. The same man was inside, standing near the register. He was staring right at me. Same clothes, same weird grin. My heart started pounding. There was no way he could have gotten here before me. I had been driving non-stop at over 70 miles per hour. Trying to stay calm, I grabbed a drink from the fridge, keeping him in my peripheral vision. He didn't move, just watched. Then, as I stepped up to the register, he spoke. "How's the drive been?" "My name." I felt a chill go through my body. I had never seen this guy before in my life. I forced a laugh. "Do I know you?" He just smiled wider. "I was hoping you'd stop." I put my drink down and walked out of the store, got in my car, locked the doors, and watched as he slowly walked out after me. I peeled out of that parking lot so fast my tires screeched. I checked my mirrors over and over, but he never followed. To this day, I have no idea who he was or how he knew my name. But I always wonder, what would have happened if I had stopped for him? A few years ago, I was driving through Oregon on a solo road trip. It was getting late, and I was exhausted, so I decided to pull over at a rest stop to stretch my legs and wake myself up a little. The place was nearly empty, just a couple of parked trucks, no one walking around. I got out, grabbed a snack from the trunk, and took a few minutes to just breathe in the cold night air. That's when I noticed a guy standing near the vending machines. He wasn't buying anything. He was just standing there. His posture was weird, too stiff, like he was pretending to be casual but failing. He didn't look at me, but I got the feeling that he was aware of me. Something about him set off alarm bells in my head, so I decided to leave. I got back into my car, locked the doors, and started the engine. But before I could put it in drive, the man turned, and that's when I saw it. He was holding something in his hand. I couldn't tell what it was. A knife? A tool? All I know is that he took a step toward my car. I didn't wait to find out. I threw the car in drive and peeled out of there so fast my tires screeched. Relief hit me as the rest stop disappeared behind me. But after a few minutes, something felt off. The air in my car smelled different. It was musty, not like my usual road trip clutter. Stale, almost like sweat or body odor, like someone had been inside recently. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just my imagination messing with me. Maybe I was overthinking. But then I reached for my bag on the passenger seat to grab my drink and immediately froze. My bag was open. I never leave it unzipped, ever. I rummaged through it quickly. My wallet was still there, my phone charger, my snacks. But then I realized my pocket knife was missing. My stomach dropped. I pulled into the next well-lit gas station, threw the car in park, and got out as fast as I could. My hands were shaking as I opened the back door, scanning the seats, the floor, the trunk. Nothing, just my bag, some jackets, and the empty seats. I exhaled, trying to convince myself I was just losing my mind. But then I saw it. A single smudged handprint on the outside of the rear passenger window. And it wasn't mine. Whoever had been at that rest stop had been inside my car. A few years ago, my best friend and I were on a road trip across the country. It was late, probably past midnight, and we were running low on gas. The next station wasn't too far ahead, maybe 2 miles, so we decided to keep driving instead of stopping at some random pull-off. That's when we saw a guy on the side of the road, waving us down. His car was parked a few feet away, hood popped open like he had broken down. He looked normal enough, mid-30s, flannel shirt, jeans, nothing that screamed danger. We slowed down, and he jogged up to the passenger side. "Hey man, you all right?" my friend asked through the window. "Yeah," he said, catching his breath. "Car won't start. You guys heading toward the gas station?" I hesitated. My gut was screaming at me. Something didn't feel right, but my friend gave me a look. It was only 2 miles. What's the worst that could happen? Yeah, hop in, I said reluctantly. The guy slid into the back seat, let out a long breath, and buckled in. Thanks, man. I appreciate it, he said. But as soon as we pulled back onto the road, he added, Actually, do you mind taking me a little further? I got some people waiting for me at a place a few miles past the gas station. Red flag number 1. Oh, we're kind of low on gas, my friend said, trying to keep it casual. The guy leaned forward slightly. You sure? It's not that far. Red flag number 2. My friend glanced at me and I made a hard call. Sorry, man. We're just stopping at the gas station, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That's when his whole demeanor changed. His breathing shifted. His fingers drummed on the seat. And then his voice dropped. Come on, man, he muttered. It's just a few more miles. He was staring at me in the rearview mirror now, his eyes dark and empty. I felt my pulse spike. My friend tightened her grip on the wheel. Yeah, sorry, man. Gas station's where we're stopping. Silence. Then he exhaled sharply. You shouldn't have done that, he muttered. At that point, we weren't waiting to see what he meant. I reached over and unbuckled my seatbelt as my friend slammed on the brakes. The second we came to a stop, we both jumped out. The guy was caught off guard, but when I yanked open the back door, he lunged forward. I barely dodged him. My friend ran around the car, and together we shoved him out, slamming the door shut before he could get back in. He screamed at us, slamming his fists against the windows, trying to open the locked doors. Drive! I shouted. My friend hit the gas so hard we nearly fishtailed. As we sped off, I looked in the mirror and saw him standing there in the middle of the road, watching us. We got to the gas station in record time, pulled up to a pump, and just sat there, shaking. Then the realization hit us. If he really needed help, why didn't he just walk the 2 miles to the gas station? We never reported it. What were we supposed to say? But sometimes I think about how his whole mood shifted the second we refused. And I know we got way too close to something bad. I was 21 and on my first real solo road trip, driving across the country. I had just passed through a quiet stretch of highway in Montana, barely any cars around, when I spotted him, a man on the side of the road, thumb out. He looked normal enough. Late 40s, clean clothes, no visible injuries. But the thing that stood out, he had no bags, no backpack, no duffel, nothing. Just standing there like he'd just appeared. Against my better judgment, I pulled over. He got in, smiling way too wide as he introduced himself as Mike. I asked him where he was headed, and he just said, anywhere, really. We drove in silence for a bit, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, I caught him staring at my hands on the wheel. Not casually, but intensely, like he was studying them. You got strong hands, he finally said, grinning. You ever had to fight someone off? I forced a laugh. No? He nodded slowly. That's good. I felt my stomach tighten. I suddenly noticed how stiff his posture was, like he was getting ready to move. Then red flag number 3, he adjusted his seatbelt, but never buckled it. I realized then, he didn't plan on staying in the car long. I kept my tone calm but firm. Hey man, I actually got to stop for gas soon. I can drop you off at the station. His smile disappeared. He just stared ahead. I turned onto a small road leading toward a gas station, hoping to get to a public place as soon as possible. but suddenly he reached for the door handle. Before I could react, he yanked it open and jumped out while we were still moving. I slammed the brakes and looked in the rearview mirror. He was already running back toward the highway. Didn't look injured. Didn't even look mad. Just gone. I reported it at the gas station, but the clerk just shrugged and said, "Yeah, people like that pass through sometimes." To this day, I have no idea what his plan was, but I'm glad I never found out. This happened about 5 years ago when I was driving through Arizona on a long road trip. It was late, probably around 2 a.m., and I was on a deserted stretch of highway with nothing but desert on both sides. No gas stations, no houses, just empty road and the occasional tumbleweed. That's when I saw her. A woman standing on the shoulder, right near the edge of my high beams. She was dressed in a hoodie and jeans, her hair hanging over her face, and she had her thumb out. Now, I don't usually pick up hitchhikers, but something about this felt wrong. She wasn't standing near a car. She wasn't carrying a bag, and she didn't even look up as I approached. I slowed down slightly, just enough to get a better look. That's when she jerked her head up. Her face was pale, eyes wide, and she bolted straight toward my car. I barely had time to react. I swerved to the left to avoid her, my tires skidding on the asphalt. I caught a glimpse of her hands as she reached out, not for a ride, but for my door handle. I slammed the gas and sped past her. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking. But before I could even process what had just happened, I looked in my rearview mirror. And that's when I saw it. 2 other people stepping out of the darkness from the side of the road. Men dressed in dark clothing emerging from where they had been hiding in the desert brush. My stomach dropped. If I had stopped, if I had let her get close enough. I didn't stop driving for another hour, not until I reached a gas station where there were people around. I still wonder what would have happened if I had stopped, but I know for sure it wouldn't have been good.